テストです。テスト。テストです。テストです。テストです。テストです。
morning again. Welcome to a special lecture series of IUJ. Today, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Komatsubara, resident representative of the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, a chief representative in Malawi, an East African country. I came to know him maybe about 10 years ago or so when I was working for JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency. I was responsible for African affairs in the organization, and Mr. Komatsubara was working at the United Nations Development Program, especially as a liaison officer for the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. And that's how and where I came to know him. As you will see, he's a very energetic and experienced international public servant. So I asked him to talk about this organization, the United Nations Development Program, as well as what it means to be an international public servant, whether it's good things and some things that you might find hard from time to time. So he wants to make this session very interactive. So please feel free to raise any questions or comments whenever you feel like to it. Okay? So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Komatsubara to maybe to hold the microphone and start. Very welcome to
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Kato. As introduced, my name is Shigeki Komatsubara. I'm resident representative of UNDP Malawi. As it happened, I'm in Japan on annual leave. But Kato Sensei has been my coach and mentor, more than colleague, for long time. Last year, he called me to have a quick presentation with you. But last year, because of COVID-19, I did it online from New Tokyo International Airport. And thank God this year, we can move around. And he called me again, Shigeki, why don't you come in person and talk to you in person? I said, thank you very much for the occasion. So it's great pleasure for me to come here finally in person and also really to interact with you. And as Kato Sensei asked me to make a presentation, including my personal perspective on working for UN, I'd like to go through a quick presentation introducing UNDP and kind of what kind of perspectives we're looking at things, and then move on to working for UN and including my personal insights. Is that okay with you? Good. So we have up until 7:30. So I'll try, that's always a challenge for me. I'll try to make my presentation as short as possible. And then I'd like to open the floor for interactions. Okay, sometimes scariest question is so-called simple question or stupid question. You know, it seems that more often than not, these are really deep questions. But any question is welcome. Maybe it's your personal career or substance. So I'll try to make as much room as possible for those things. So let me start the presentation. Okay, so I work for UNDP, United Nations Development Program. How many people heard about UNDP? Oh, great. Thank you so much. Usually it's one of the lesser understood and lesser known agencies in the United Nations development system. But in fact, it's quite extensive and large one among UN system in terms of dedicated to development. So I say largest development agency in United Nations development system. We operate in more than 170 countries. So basically, you delete all the countries from the list which belongs to OECD. We cover the least developed countries as well as middle income, including the higher middle income countries. What are we working on? Broadly speaking, we are mandated to work on eradication of poverty, structural transformation, and reinforcing resiliency. It's quite broad, and it has reasons for that. But then before going there, the organization was established in 1966. That's very easy to remember because that's the same age as me. Headquarters in New York, right on the opposite side of that famous Secretariat building. Our annual budget is about 5 billion US dollars. So it's not a small agency in terms of technical assistance and policy advice. Staffs, it depends how you cut it, but we say 8,000 people working with us all around the world for development. And in Africa, where I work, we have UNDP country offices in all countries, 46. So small ones like Lesotho and Eswatini, we have a dedicated team on the ground, and each office has resident representative because somebody has to be there, right? But not only we have offices in all countries, we have regional service center in Addis Ababa, Dakar, Pretoria. And their job is actually to provide a more targeted policy advice and support in collaboration with country offices to support each country's policy agenda. So we have experts congregated in those areas. Addis Ababa is the largest center. Dakar, looking at more of a kind of Sahel region, stability in West Africa. Pretoria, looking at private sector and financing for development. For Africa, so I said 5 billion annually, right? We are spending about 1.3 billion US dollars. So it is the largest, not only in terms of number of the countries, but in terms of resources we're spending. Africa is the largest region for UNDP. And it is very important in many, many sense, as we know. And then again, it depends on how you cut the numbers. But roughly speaking, we have about 5,000 people working for UNDP in Africa. Think about 46 countries, large operations like maybe South Sudan, like DRC. They have like 300, 400 people. Even small operations like Eswatini. Sorry, my colleague is heading office there. So by no means, I'm not saying it's not important, but like by the size of the country, small operations, still we have 25, 30 people. Because you need a minimum sets of people to continue to advise the government and stakeholders on their development agenda. So altogether, we are roughly 5,000 people working in Africa all around the clock. Headquarters is quite small. We have Regional Bureau for Africa. I was sitting there for 8 years and a half working on TICAD. It's about 25 to 30 people. So compare 25 people and 5,000 working all the time in Africa, you will see how decentralized we are. So our focus is always bringing more capacity closer to the ground to support the needs and provide solutions for the policy and other challenges happening on the ground. So if you take a look at UN, you will think about Secretariat, right? But then there are different agencies have different directions and different kind of propensities. Agencies like UNDP, UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, those are more like solution-focused agencies, ground-based agencies. So of course, to support countries' development needs, we need to build up our operational, but also substantive capacity because country needs to think about development agenda, development policies, how to manage finances and other things. But also the reason why we are supporting those high-level policy work is to make differences on the ground. And that's the reason why you will see that most of our presence and staff and capacity are directed toward the ground rather than concentrated in headquarter positions. Africa is large, as we know. So when it comes to kind of issues we're working on, pretty much you can see all sorts of issues. Poverty, good governance, climate change, crisis prevention, recovery, but also cross-cutting theme like capacity development, gender empowerment, South-South collaboration, and increasingly, since COVID-19, innovation, digital, private sector, entrepreneurship. The key is, like my job is to bring all those different elements together to really come up with the right package to support the country I'm serving. In case of me, Malawi. So when you go to the country, every country has different package because every country is different and has its own unique challenges. But if you congregate all of them, you see, of course, large continent, biggest constituency in UN, we cover almost all the areas when it comes to development. Malawi, for me, we have 11 agencies, 11 resident agencies on the ground, but we also work with agencies which don't have offices in Malawi. So 10 non-resident agencies. So for example, I'm working with UN Office for Drugs and Crimes. They don't have office in Malawi, but we're working together. UN Environment Program, they don't have office in Malawi, but we are working together. Like that. And Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, we work together because we're supporting the same area. So 11 agencies and 10 non-resident agencies. About, I said 926, roughly speaking, we have 1,000 people working for UN in Malawi. So it's a large family. For UNDP, we have about 140 people. It's one of those large offices because the demands are large. It's unfortunately still least developed countries. We have lots of support needs with the government and the civil society and other people. And international society, international UN actually thinks as international society, we have to provide more focused support, direct more funding for the least developed countries because leaving no one behind is something we all agree is of critical importance. So we tend to receive more funding than middle income countries. And then with that funding, we run our programs with 140 people. So for example, just to give my example, we get last year $11 million from UNDP headquarters, non-earmarked funding. Then I will discuss with the government and other stakeholders how best to invest that $11 million. But then not only stopping there, by using that, we will mobilize $30 million more. So that's always our way of doing our business, making a critical investment, leveraging our resources, talk to our partners to mobilize more resources for Malawi. And that's what we're doing with 140 people. Country program document, all those agencies have a country document spanning 4 years. And then that will give a framework of our assistance to the government. We do it together with the government because it's important for our agenda to derive from government agenda. We take stock of the situation together. We come up with a framework as United Nations as a whole. And in that framework, then we come up with our own country program for 4 years to come so that people can understand. We share the general perception of the situation, and then we share the general understanding of what particular areas UN as a whole is expected to make a difference, contribute to the development of Malawi. And within that big picture, which agency is expected to contribute to what areas in what manner. So it's kind of cascading logic, but that is how we are coordinating ourselves to avoid overlaps and better build on synergies. And with the full ownership of the government and other stakeholders. In our case, being poor doesn't mean we cannot be innovative, right? So Malawi, very happy to say, have lots of very famous flagship projects. National ID. You have national ID, right? All adults over 18 have national ID. And it is, I think, only a few examples in Africa, and we did it in the least developing countries. We got the award from ITU. Not we, but you got the real award from ITU, like Digital Innovation Award. And we get lots of inquiries, you know, How did you manage to do that? It's great that every adult has national ID. And now we are rolling out child registration so that actually Malawi may become the first country in Africa to leave no one behind, literally. Each child has designated ID linked to their parents. And not only it's good for everybody to know that they exist, but it is creating so much fiscal space, efficiencies of the economy, and also enabling us to target our assistance much better. So national ID is really transforming the expectations of socioeconomic development. And that's the reason why actually ITU people loved it. You know, not only poor guys did digital, but actually it is making a critical difference, which could be applied to any other economy. We provide electoral support. Malawi, congratulations for managing very closely for the elections. You got the Chatham House Award, right, for the judicial independence. And then Malawi was on the front page of the Economist magazine of 2021 as a country of the year, because economists, sometimes cheeky they may be, they really wanted to tell the whole world that, well, we are talking about multipolar society, different value system, but listen, there are some countries who are improving in democracy. So you were on the front page of the Economist magazine 2021. So part of the way we are supporting that is the electoral support, but we have a kind of whole range of governance project to support governance institutions and create a space for political civic dialogue. Private sector, we run Malawi Innovation Challenge Fund. That is also very innovative. We started before, actually UNDP itself came up with their own rules and regulations about engaging private sector directly. So we really started this when nobody else was doing, but it is proving so effective and popular because we run the fund with IFAD, UK, and other donors. Call for challenges from Malawian private sector. If you're interested in coming up with innovative business models, which will bring more value to the people of Malawi and grow your business, submit your applications to us. And then, of course, I'm not the one to select, but the business experts in anonymity will take a look at all those applications and select those ones which are particularly promising. And that fund will provide half of the funding. So it's always a matching fund to support that business, come up with that innovative business model and create jobs and incomes and value added. For what? To demonstrate that actually innovation can happen. In a country like Malawi, if we can do innovation, anybody else can do innovation. And it is important for larger Malawians to know that they have talents, they have potentials. And because we can demonstrate that they can achieve lots of things. So it is really the investment for catalytic transformation to convince other people that we can do it together, to create jobs and incomes and transform our business from within. So that's Malawi Innovation Challenge Fund. Green Accelerator is more for young people who have ideas but not really started business. The same thing, if anybody has a great idea of creating a business, which supports community, submit your application to us, and then experts will select. Usually every year, we select like 10 to 12 young entrepreneurs. We give them 12 months coaching through everything, because they just had ideas, but they don't know how to run business. So maybe they need to be taught how to manage their finance, bookkeeping, merchandising, marketing, right? We provide all the coaching for 12 months. At the end of the 12 months, we give them small money to run their business. And it's amazing, first of all, increasing number of applicants and successful business are run by women, right? That's great. Secondly, most of them survive. Not only on themselves, but they work with communities. So this is producing so many good stories to really try to convince the people of Malawi that they can do it. You can do it. And we are not asking for pity and charity. We're asking for investment because we can make difference. So that narrative has to change in development. And that's what we are trying to do. So demonstrating concretely what Malawi can do if given great ideas and good leadership and a little bit of support. So very, very happily, we are making a little bit of waves in terms of beating the conventional wisdom. The being poor, yeah, it's difficult, it's challenging indeed. But it doesn't mean that we cannot do anything about it to change the reality. If we have leadership and a little bit of investment in talents and opportunities. But looking then now, take our way all the way back to the global situation we find ourselves in. This is a copy and paste from our strategic plan, latest plan, how we see the world evolving. I found it really kind of spot on, so I just copied and pasted. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, challenge of reaching SDG was already significant, compounded by climate emergency, political polarization, and challenge multilateralism. Continued conflict and forced displacement, the number of people living in poverty rose, yes. For the first time in 30 years, we have more people sliding back into poverty. In 2020, for the first time since 1998, by estimated 124 million, inequalities are growing, traditional social contract is no longer working for many. Today's development challenges are dynamic, interconnected, multidimensional, that requires systematic solutions. Multilateral cooperation is vital in addressing those shared challenges that cross boundary of geography and time. And I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. Because look at the way, for example, I'm in Africa, so like I'm watching things from Africa. But in Africa too, we had COVID-19. Government had to spend money to support people, even if they're poor. What happened after? Cyclone came, infrastructure destroyed. What happened after? So-called geopolitical events happened. It impacted the whole supply chain, food chain, and energy chain. Everything started to become very, very expensive. Diesel price went triple times. Gasoline prices went like almost triple times. Price of the bread, the cheapest one, doubled in 6 months. Electricity tariff went up 30%, and they are now discussing doubling the tariff. Water rate went up 50%. If you're living in less than $1.9 a day, you would imagine what that kind of price inflation means for the capacity of people to really survive in the situation. But listen, I mean, Malawi is doing its best, but now it's negotiating with IMF because they have been borrowing structurally, but now they have to spend so much. But then the funding is becoming less and less. While it's not development issue, maybe a macroeconomic issue, while we are struggling with those increasing deficits, US and Europe started to raise interest rates because they thought, oh yeah, I mean, inflation, we need to now tackle inflation on our homes. So let's raise interest rate very steeply. One of the impact of raising interest rate is that the cheap dollar is no longer available when people need it. They are all going back to US. They are all going back to Europe. Because if you're an investor, if you put your dollar back in US and still can earn 5%, 6% return, what is the incentive for you to keep lending money for very vulnerable, poor countries with, unfortunately, less credit rating? So really, like, we're in dire straits, and when we needed help, those monies are going back to their home country. That requires global solution, global discussion and global solution. And that debt issue would become very serious, my feeling, probably this year, in coming years. And that really requires global discussion and global response. Just like we had like 20 years ago, maybe, on global structure issues. So lots of things are changing, and lots of countries are in dire straits because they tried hard to defend themselves. What are some of the key elements we're looking at? I kind of divided them into two so that we can take not only negative view, but we can identify what are opportunities. Every crisis is opportunity, right? I refuse to give up. Crisis is opportunity. I mean, and then in crisis, you don't need explanation why you need to do things differently. Right? So I keep telling my government friends, this is a great chance for you. You don't need explanation why you have to do things differently because we are in dire straits and we're in crisis. There's no option but to do things differently. But look at the changing side. I talk about COVID-19, climate change and resiliency, okay, impact and frequency of climate-induced events. Geopolitical events, the impact of it is really global. Even like Malawi is dependent on wheat, 40% of its import from that region. I was surprised, that's UNIDO statistics. I was really surprised that the Malawi is depending 40% of its wheat import from that region. Just one example. But if you start to look at every country, you can see similar situation. And fiscal squeeze. You know, when we need cheap US dollars is no longer cheap and it's going back to US. So lots of countries are now going back to IMF to negotiate emergency loans. Emerging inequalities between countries, between North and South, or even among the countries, within the country, especially when you look at middle income country. Huge chunk of absolutely poor population resides in middle income countries. So being middle income doesn't mean you have no poverty. Actually, you may be entering a new phase of your development. You may be starting to see new gaps between those who have and those who have not. And even digital technology, if we're not careful, can create a new divide of those who have access to information, those who haven't access to information. So, new kind of inequalities may be starting to happen even if your country is growing. In addition to all different global changes. Political polarization and inclusive governance is not only global phenomena, but as you see, we'll take a look at our countries, even bigger ones like US and others. We will start to see less and less mutual engagement and informed dialogue, civic space, political space. Rather, more people are comfortable with sticking to their own views and kind of getting the information which suits them from the internet. What does it mean in terms of inclusive governance? What does it mean in terms of us talking to each other and creating consensus? And lastly, talking of fiscal space, we need to figure out the better way of funding development. Because the money going through official channels for development is going smaller and smaller. UN is a small fish. More and more portion of development, the money flowing to developing countries are belonging to the private sector in one way or another. One big chunk is remittances, right? Your brothers and sisters would send money from their work in Europe, US, and other countries. Other parts are seriously foreign direct investment, even portfolio investment. How can we try to influence those flow of money by leveraging ODA or leveraging the money we're investing so that more money would support the inclusive development rather than buying up something? That requires a little bit new round of discussion, especially in the current situation where lots of countries are finding themselves in dire straits. And not because they did something wrong, they really worked hard. These compounding difficulties force them to spend more money. And when they needed more money, money are gone, right? Especially when it comes to official money. So we need serious discussion about how we can create more conducive environment to start to influence the private flow of finance in a way to contribute to development, inclusive, equitable development. So those are kind of a bit of gloomy side, right? difficulties. We need to work on this. Having said that, I said crisis is opportunities. What kind of things are we starting to see? Digital can work wonders in introducing transparency, accountability, creating new value added. Even like in Africa, software industry is growing fast. I was talking to somebody in business here in Japan, and he said, "What about esports?" I said, "That's great. You know, our brothers and sisters in Africa, they're really good athletes. Probably you'll be good athletes on esports as well. Digital transformation, creating values. Talking on Mauritius, talking on Rwanda. What is driving the economy is digital and financial industry. It has nothing to do with being landlocked. You have right strategy and strong leadership. You can go to Rwanda, you can see they are transforming themselves. Mauritius is upper middle income. They started from sugarcane, then tourist industry, right? And then go to ICT, now financial industry. They are becoming like Singapore of Indian Ocean. Digital, innovation and entrepreneurship. I mentioned it. You know, being poor doesn't mean we cannot innovate, we cannot be creative. So I really wanted to defeat the conventional wisdom. Oh, you are poor. What you need to do is to address poverty. Because my belief is that you can never perpetually addressing poverty. You can never be playing catch up forever. If you play catch up forever, you will never be on par. You will never catch up because somebody is also moving. You keep on addressing deficiencies and problems, you will never be good at anything because that somebody is moving on as well. How can we play to our strengths? How can we identify our talents? How can we make focused investment in our strengths? And then growing the values, growing economy. And we work together. It's okay to be different. Every country needs to have different strengths. And it's okay to be different. That's the reason why we work together, right? We don't need everybody to be the same. That's not possible. And it's not good for either, none of us. If that argument holds for our individuals, why are we saying that we have to always play catch up? We have to address something, right? Deficiencies, inefficiencies, problems, and others, forgetting that in my dear Malawi, Malawi has talents, Malawi has ideas, Malawi has potentials, and those potentials are real because we are proving by our investment that actually that is a reality. So innovation and entrepreneurship is not only high tech, but it's about the new way of doing things and it's new way of looking at things. And entrepreneurship is not about those business guys, but also the expectation, behavior change in each of one of us to try something new and see what happens. To dare to ask questions, to try to challenge conventional wisdom. And I think that is really needed on all of us. Now that actually we are really coming into a very difficult corner in terms of sustainable development. Population grows, youth and women, they're always eager to try. And then when women are empowered, actually we have more peace. That's true. I mean, I'm not just kind of talking good about it, right? And youth, if they're guided in the right way, they would exert so much potential and power. They're willing to challenge because they have nothing to lose. So what can we do? Rather than to put them on the street to throw stones, what can we do to guide them, give them direction and guide them and support them so they use that energy to create some additional values? And I like engaging youth and women. Urbanization. As you know, as we talk, more than half of global GDP is created by cities, quote unquote. Okay? It's not everything is a good story. It creates issues if you don't manage. It can create slums. It could create crimes, right? But if we manage it well, it could be a space for value added. It could be a space for innovation. How can we not only just town planning, for water and sanitation. How can we come up with more comprehensive approach to urbanization so that cities continues to become a place where additional values are created, new frontiers are tested. Young people can come for something. Now young people come expecting something exciting in the city. No ideas. Lo and behold, they don't find jobs. They end up in slums or they go back to their village. That's a waste of time and money. But if we nurture our cities, cities can create unique values while trying to reduce a problem it could cause. Green and blue economies. Okay, green, you know, the global climate change and environment discussion. There are lots of discussions going on still, and it's very intractable and very deep discussion. But also, it is an area where lots of fundings will become available, not only on official sense, but also really leveraging private sector, as we know. Emission rights, carbon offsetting, even debt equity swap. So if some of you guys are interested in a financial expert, actually, if you go into green economy, maybe that's a great area for you to combine your expert knowledge on financial products plus development understanding. Blue economy is about ocean. Indian Ocean, or maybe a small one, Gulf of Guinea, Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean. And it gives us, it kind of challenges us to change perspectives. Because, you know, like you and I, the way we've been taught geography, right? Africa is a one huge map, right? And on this side is the Indian Ocean. On that side is Atlantic Ocean. But they are also cut, both of them are cut in the middle because we put landmass in the center, right? What do you start to see if you put, for example, Indian Ocean in the middle? Because it is already an economic zone. The people, money, and goods are moving around the Indian Ocean. Technology too. The drugs I take in Malawi, the most reliable one, made in India. ICT, we engage, made in India. COVID-19 vaccine, which I got for the first time in Malawi, thank God, came from India. So as we know, there are different realities emerging in our world. And some people call it global south. It used to be like kind of antithesis to OECD countries. It's more like a protest, voice of protest. Now, South is having a confidence because they are driving economy. Population is growing, but the economy is growing. They think they can contribute to the global affairs. I think they can. Therefore, they should be treated as equals. So now it's far more than just kind of political slogan. It is economic reality. When we talk about global south, Africa is economically more interconnected with Latin America. You know, Brazil has a strong tie with some of the countries in Southern Africa in agriculture, for example. So if you start to change the way you look, this global south and blue economy, you may start to see some very different picture of a global society evolving. And that gives us lots of opportunity to do things differently and do things new. Private sector, value proposition of multilateral system, I think that is tested. And we are required more and more to convince other people that actually investing in UN, for example, UNDP, is a good investment. So one thing I was told by administrator, my big boss, who appointed me, was that, okay, you guys, I understand it's so difficult to put numbers to governance because it's subjective. But still, you have to put dollars and cents to what you're doing. Because in some way, we need to appeal to the people that investing in UN, investing in UNDP is a good investment. And I do believe it's a good investment. Investing in development is a good investment. because that is the ultimate solution for war and conflict. But we have to put the message across in easy to understand way for millions of taxpayers. So we are, we are very convinced that the value proposition is tested, and that's the reason why we are really trying to change the way we work together as UN system. And I will skip this, but this is UNDP's strategic plan. Structured transformation, leaving no one behind, building resilience. That's a big kind of change we like to contribute to. How? Poverty, governance, crisis prevention, environment, energy, and gender. Those are the key areas we like to bring our expertise around. But then, reflecting the new environment, what could really leverage the impact of those support? Innovation, digitization, and financing for development. So whatever we do in those 6 areas, we will think about innovation. We will think about the role of digital. We will always think how we can mobilize more effectively resources for the countries which requires more funding. UN, as I said, is adapting to the new reality. Value proposition. There are 3 major reforms going on. One is UN development system. So we are working closer together, more coordinated, holding each other accountable for results, right? But then not only there, but also peace and security side, UN is trying to merge the traditional structure more closely together so that we can advise and approach issues more holistically. And of course, third parties management. We need to make efficiency gains. So in Malawi, actually, we worked together among agencies. We rationalized, we streamlined our services. Last year alone, we saved $2 million from operational cost. And that $2 million goes back to the program. So it's a good investment for us. Working for UN, okay. So I try to go through this in next 50 minutes. If you're interested in UN, please consider joining UN. We are always looking for talents. We are open. We are more open than what you think. Okay, so what is UN for you? UN is really, really global, comprehensive institutions. So I always said, lots of people ask me, okay, Shigeki, what should I do to join UN? And I tell them, it may not be the right question. Tell me what you want to pursue, and there are always departments or institutions or organizations which work in your area of interest. So if you're a doctor, then WHO is very close ally for you. If you're an educator, maybe UNESCO or UNICEF, right? If you're keenly working on food security, maybe WFP or FAO, right? If you're interested in the rule of law, maybe, yes, UNDP is the right place to come, right? So whatever you're interested in, you feel passionate about, consider there are always some people working on your issue in UN. And if you start to look at it that way, then probably you have better chance of locating something which may really interest you. So diverse career paths. You don't need to join right from the graduating from graduate school. I went to London School of Economics for master's degree, and I really wanted to join UN right away. But you know, going to graduate school like this is great because you start to learn from other people. And I gradually started to learn, well, it may not be the right thing for me to try to join UN right from the graduation because they don't take that kind of people. You need professional experience, proven experience. And of course, you study abroad, you start to see things in different ways. So I decided to come back to Japan, and I work for Keidanren, Japan Federation of Economic Organizations, as economist for international trade and investment. I never thought I would join UNDP, but I worked. They sent me to OECD. I hugely enjoyed. I worked for them for 10 years. One day I bumped into UNDP people, and I started to talk to each other. We really enjoyed discussion. And then I got a letter that said, Shigeki, if you're so interested in learning the other side, I said the other side because I was working on OECD, other side, increasing other side of the globe, why don't you just join us? And by hindsight, they were looking for somebody who has experience working in private sector because they knew it's going to be important in development. And that's not the kind of expertise they had in AMPO. So they are looking for somebody different from this traditional stereotype image of development. And they are looking for somebody who's more interested in management. So I didn't know all these, but by curiosity, I bumped into them. We struck up a great conversation. And why don't you join us and work with us? And that's the point I really started to seriously consider. Should I take this offer? Or should I say thank you, but no thank you? And I decided curiosity won over my concerns, and I joined UN. And that was 20 years ago. Amazing. 20 years ago. I never thought I would survive in UN for like more than 5 years. Because you join UN, everybody else is so experienced. They seems to know everything, and they have political connections and everything, right? You are always kind of on your back foot, trying to catch up. And I never, I mean, how can those guys survive 20 years in UN? But you continue to do what you like, when you realize you are there for 20 years. So you never know, okay? So diverse career paths, but please keep interest in UN if you're interested, because there are so many opportunities floating around. But if you don't have your kind of radar screen tuned in certain way, it will be very difficult to catch the right one you'll be interested in. So it's always good to think about what your passion is. And if your passion is really making a difference for the public, then UN is a great place to work. And then on top of it, if you have your special skills, if you have your substantive interest, then you can even have your radar kind of targeted in certain areas of UN. Then probably you have better chance of locating something down the road. The trick is you never know what comes up in UN because we don't have like Japanese kind of regular recruitment cycle. So when the needs comes up and the advertisement comes up and then you locate it, you apply, you never know. But if you don't apply, nothing happens, right? It's guaranteed. And even in UN, I mean, nobody would disagree with me. Probably in a career search within UN, it has so much diverse potential. You fail more times than you succeed. You keep applying. Yes, I'm interested. Maybe I can do this job. Maybe it's nothing of your fault. You are great, but still you don't get that job. It happens because we're a big organization and we consider lots of other things. But you try, sometimes things happen, right? So if you're interested, keep trying, keep looking, look at your passions, look at your missions, okay? And keep your antennas always out there. And talking about UN, working in UN, it's not only specialties, you're expert, right? PhD on something. That's great. But then we need to work with a team. We have what, 194 member countries? That practically means we have 194 sets of common sense. We have 194 sets of different historical cultural background. But we believe that we can come up with better solution if we work together. It's sometimes time consuming and painful. Sometimes it doesn't work, but still we try. When it happens, we can come up with great solutions, which can bring everybody on board. So to make it happen, we need sets of skills which we can commonly observe in highly successful people in that kind of extremely multicultural, diverse organizations. That's what we call competencies. Have you heard about competencies before? No? Okay. Google them. Google them. Okay. UN is very transparent organization. It's big organization. There are people who are studying those competencies. What are those common characteristics we observe in those people who are successful in making things happen in this kind of highly diversified environment? And they categorize them very, very nicely for anybody to understand. You can Google UN and competencies. You can find lots of guidebooks free of charge. And if you read them, that is really helpful for you to understand yourself. Some guidebooks say, if you're doing these things in your daily life, you have this competency. By the way, if you're doing these things, you don't have that competency. And then they will give you also the reading list. Okay, something you want to learn more, check out those books. So we are serious about helping people to develop themselves as a good professional, good rounded professional, in addition to you honed in some specialties. Okay, so competency is so important. When we recruit people, PhD is just one thing, or master is one thing we just consider. Why we interview people? No, we are testing the knowledge, technical knowledge, because we know more or less what you have. But put it simply, will this person enjoy working with a team? Or will this person develop herself or himself if we take her on board and invest in him or her? So we really want to know you when we interview people, know you as a person, right? And there has to be some way of knowing that person. That's competency. So when we ask question, we ask you to give concrete example. Whatever you did in your past life, I know you did a lot. Can you tell me one concrete example, for example, of when you are put under extreme pressure to achieve something, multiple priorities at one time, had limited time? What was the situation? What did you do? What was the result? Tell me that story. And you tell me that story, I understand what kind of caliber you have. Is this person capable of prioritizing? Is this person capable of reaching out to other colleagues to ask for help? Or is this person capable of analyzing the situation and presenting it to your superiors? Just one example. Study competencies. That would really help your professional development. Wherever you work, okay, you can forget about UN, but you work wherever. That is what is required for all of us to become an efficient and good professional. Part of it is communication skill. And I don't need to lecture you on communication skill because you're here already. Working at UN is also value choice, lifestyle and value choice. So I don't recommend everybody to work at UN. Sometimes it's not easy. We work on the ground, we stay and deliver, right? And somehow, rather unceremoniously, some donors call us last resort. Okay, for example, COVID-19 happened, right? The border was closed, airport was closed. The order of the UN is that you stay there and deliver. Okay, the embassies sent back their staff. Bilateral agencies, most of them are gone. Town is very quiet. But you need somebody to support the country and work together to deal with the situation. UN's order, marching orders, you stay and deliver. And actually, that was very interesting because I was told you stay and deliver. It's like captain of the ship. So you're the last one to get out of the country if you have to. But basically, you stay and deliver. But nobody told us exactly what to deliver. Because nobody knew what the COVID-19 was, socioeconomically or as medically or whatever. So we have to improvise everything, bringing our heads together on the ground. And when you're faced with that kind of complete unknown situation, human beings are really creative. And it was scary. Yes, it was scary, but it was fun. Because that is really innovation. That is about us bringing ourselves together on the platform, bringing different ideas together and see what comes out of it. That's what we need to do. It's lifestyle and value choice. So I told the university student, if you are interested just on counting dollars, go to Wall Street, not to UN. Right? You want to compete on the amount of money, go to Wall Street. That's your place. I don't recommend you to come to UN. But listen, within UN, in UNDP, there are lots of guys who worked on the Wall Street and had enough of it. And they decided to join us because they want to do something for the public. They said, well, maybe they got burnt out. I don't know, it's intense life. But they basically said, I had enough making money. But making money shouldn't be the entire life for me. I want to join you, and still they are in charge of finance department. But listen, they are managing finance to make the money long way for the development, right? So they are feeling definitely better now, right? Than counting money at the Wall Street and competing with the guy next door. Okay. So we are really focusing on developing talents because UN is about people. Different people working together to create solutions. Myself, I mentioned, I studied in Tokyo and I went to LSE. And then I realized, oh, I cannot join UN right away. And I need to understand my country first. I came back to Japan and worked for business organization as an economist, like international investment and business guy. That's why they sent me to Paris for 3 years. I'm very thankful to them. I enjoyed it. And then, but you start to get more intellectually interested. And then, South is getting more and more important. That's when, really by coincidence, by curiosity, you bump into the people from UNDP, and then you strike out a good conversation. They tell you, why don't you join us? And then, of course, compared with Japanese employment, it's more unstable, right? It's not lifelong. It's a fixed term contract to be renewed. You never know. But at the same time, when everybody is unstable, right? Then it's subjective judgment. Everybody is working on 2-year contract. How can you say you're unstable? Everybody is living on the same environment. And then, of course, we cannot change the whole team if they're good. We need people to stick around, build their experience, and work together and create solutions. So sometimes it's good not to be captured by one set of kind of thinking, like lifelong employment and how can you go to UN when you know that your contract is for 12 months. I had a hard time persuading my relatives because they wanted me to stay with a very nice job in the middle of Tokyo, nicely paying lifelong employment. And then I said, I want to join UN. And they kept asking me, so how long is your contract? 12 months. What happens after 12 months? Oh, probably it's going to be renewed. And they get really berserk saying, how come you can bring your family with 12 months contract and not knowing what will happen after that? You stay with your job, and you know exactly what happens to you 20 years. And you know pretty much how much you can get. Your family will be happy, your relatives will be stable. It's selfish of you. And kind of, I had no kind of rebuttals for that. So I said, okay, but let me do the job, and let me try. And I did it, and I'm very grateful that I'm still standing after 20 years. But competencies for the future, please take a look. Talking about competencies, okay? It's very, very useful for you. Talking about yourself, looking at yourself, analyzing yourself, what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, where your passions lie. And if you start to understand all these, you can become your best career coach. And when interview comes, you don't need to worry too much about how to present yourself because you know yourself pretty much. And you go with peace of mind and say, I'm this kind of guy. I know my weaknesses, but I'm passionate about this. I have been doing this. I have been making differences. And I still want to challenge myself. That's the reason why I want this job. Very persuasive, right? So personal thoughts. Okay, 30 minutes left. Okay. It's really my personal thoughts, nothing official. Okay. So you take it or leave it, whatever you like. For UN, working for UN, stay healthy, stay safe. That's really the basics, because we're all working in a hard situation, sometimes unpredictable, but we have good security training and security guys. So I personally didn't feel threatened, like life threatening, not really. We work as a team, but you have to make judgment on what is safe for you. For example, UN doesn't penalize anybody if you get off the plane because you observe some oils leaking or maybe crew may be drunk. Right? You book a plane, you're trying to climb onto the plane, you start to see some rusts and corrosions and all those things. You can make your own judgment and you can say that I'm not taking this flight because I don't feel comfortable enough. That's okay. That's okay because we put safety first. Open mind is so important because it's important to know that we don't know. And that's very refreshing for me recently because the UNDP kind of changed the style of the work. So we're engaging lots of people and engage them in discussion to try to find what the issues are, and try to bring different solutions to that issue, rather than approaching people and say that well, I hold the truth. I know your country is in this situation. I know you have these deficiencies. Therefore, I'm here to provide you with support. Because that is supply side. It's not coming from the ground. What are real issues could be more integrated, more complicated. And we need people to discuss those issues together to know really what are the real issues. And we want to bring our resources to address that issue rather than what we think are the problem. So open mind is very important. Passion and mission, I mentioned, it's better. It's better you do what you like, right? Yes. Yes. Okay. Know yourself, play to your strengths. Okay. Don't worry too much about the weaknesses. Stay relevant. If we want to advise people, we have to know better than those people. So until we retire, even after retiring, Kato Sensei is learning. And network and mentoring, I would always say quality is more important than quantity. So if you have 2 or 3 people who can really tell you hard advice, Shigeki, what are you doing? You better think about those things. You are in good business. Rather than running around exchanging 100 business cards, it doesn't make too much sense for me, too much. Challenge yourself, think and perform at higher levels, because we always need to, it's like learning. We always need to try to improve ourselves. So when you get onto certain job, I really like you to think higher and broader and behave like you are one step up. Okay? Resiliency, never gave up. We chase possibilities. And it's completely irrational, but working in UN, in this kind of situation, we have to believe, we have to convince ourselves, irrational it may be, that if we continue to work hard, we can find solutions and doors would open for us. And it does open. You may not be convinced, but you have to believe, okay? And lastly, this is advice I got from my boss when I'm going to the field as res rep. There are 5 P's you need to mind yourself. Purpose, why you are there. What kind of difference you want to make. Possibilities, it's easy to deny, it's easy to say nothing happens. Our job is to pursue possibilities, even in the most difficult of situations. Personality, you have to make a call, you have to make a decision, you have to make an engagement. So your job is far more than technical thing. Eventually, whole you will be tested. And that's why it's important to understand yourself, what you're good at, what you like. Publish. Please tell your stories, because I know you came from different background. You have achieved a lot already. If you tell your stories of your challenges and difficulties and how you overcame it, your aspirations, you will be aspiring so many other people. So I say it's no option, it's your obligation for you to tell your stories, share your stories, including some difficult moments. And you can inspire so many people. Lastly, again, irrational. But having said all that, we have to pray. You do your best and then hope for the best. Okay? And that's what I'm taking dear to my heart. So I finished my presentation here. I have 25, 30 minutes before we wrap up. I just like to open the floor for any thoughts and questions and answers. But thank you very much for the occasion. Thank you. Okay, anybody raise your hand? Yes, first. Can you introduce yourself? Akwaba.
Wow. Because I see a lot of interventions that were being done in Ghana. And I've spent my time watching documentaries, so I know a lot. And we always see international organizations as saviors in our country. But growing up now as an adult and facing challenges in my country, I begin to ask a lot of questions about the intentions of international organizations in Ghana. And in your presentation, I see good governance as one of the key areas of work. Yes, by UNDP. UNDP have been in Ghana for a long time now. One challenge we are faced with is abuse of governance. And so I want to know what's the scope in detail of what UNDP does on the field, and what are the limitations or the constraints that Ghanaians face with.
You know, yeah, very good question. I mean, I lived there for 4 years. I'm still waiting for honorary passport. But you know, I mean, our approach, I mean, governance is simply put the way people interact with each other and formulate consensus and implement them. So I don't have any one set of this should be the good governance. It is important in their culture, in their tradition, people feel that voices have been heard. You know, the conclusion may be different. But if people feel that their voices has been heard, actually society become more coherent and stable. How can we support, for example, in your country, Ghanaian institutions and Ghanaian people to create that kind of environment? That is our approach. Rather than telling people that this should be the good governance, you should do this, you should do this. No. And Ghana has a great tradition, for example, National Architecture for Peace, National Peace Council, headed by very trustworthy church leaders, Muslim clerics and chiefs. You know, the traditional governance playing very important role in holding society together, on top of, or in addition to, the modern form of government. So if we have those two, we support both sides. So we support governance institution, parliament, human rights commission, ministries, justice, because they need to function. But then you cannot put all the issues on the modern government because it could be easily get overwhelmed. And more the issue closer to the ground. Actually, we have wise people on the ground who can call okay, young man, come, I know you're upset. What's the problem? They tell to their language, they tell to the chiefs and other prominent people, and they can reason with them. Yeah, I know what you're upset with, but it's better you do it this way. So let us ensure that we can create this complementary environment so that more people can play active roles in holding the society together. That's the approach we have. So full respect of Ghanaian tradition and culture in the systems, including traditional systems. So, but we can talk more. Yes. Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you so much, Professor, for such a nice talk. I am Rafia Qayyum. I'm from Pakistan, and my work experience is both in private and public sector. 4 years in private sector and 8 years in public sector. I'm a civil servant. I have worked with international organizations in the capacity that I was working as assistant chief in the planning and development department, which deals with their foreign portfolio, with international development partners. For UNDP, we were very much in close contact. My immediate question is that at some point in time, this was the conclusion that who actually, when we are doing any project or anything, because you mentioned a lot of leadership role here and leading the team perspective here as well. So who generally call the shots when it is finalizing the deal or sealing the deal? Because at that time, sometimes there were scenarios where you have to talk about the things that you, like we had to tell UNDP that you are not going to decide this. This is the government part. This is somehow like over there in that boundary of the government discretion, and this is like. So is it something that is that particular country head or particular team is deciding, or it is something coming from the central command?
Not center of command. That's the reason why we can have meticulous process. For example, to decide how UN should contribute to the national agenda, you always start with national agenda. We have common country analysis, which means not only UN people, but we work with government people to take stock of the progress we have, what the situation is, to identify key challenges for you. And the next stage is coming up with cooperation framework, which is as UN as a whole, okay, with that broad picture, where particular UN can make meaningful contribution, in what way? Once it's agreed with you, then each agency, including UNDP, would derive their country program from that bigger framework and consensus made. So the way we come up with our own program is structured in such way that it derives from the government and country priorities. So I don't get orders from headquarters. Or Shigeki, this is what you need to do in Malawi. Of course, every agency has broader mandate, right? But there are lots of flexibility in there. And that's the reason why UN is really on the ground working with you. Talking about leadership, of course, ownership is the government. Right? It has to be. Because we are supporting the government and then other stakeholders to make differences. It's not us changing the country. I have no dream that UN can change any country. But we can support the government, the people to do more and more effectively, put more ideas, a little bit bringing other friends who can support you, and add a little bit more financing to invite more finance. So our role is always supportive and catalytic, and hopefully, together with you, transformative in terms of the impact. So that's how we approach it. Leadership, though, is important for everybody, each one of you, because you need to be a leader to influence other people. So leadership doesn't mean, okay, only res rep is a leader. No. Right? So I tell everybody, you need to be a leader. You go to the field, you engage with people. Ultimately, you have to make a judgment call on the field. You influence other people. That's a leader. So leadership is needed in everybody. It's just that they're kind of using that skill at different levels. But all of us can and should be a good leader in convincing people that actually they can do something. They have something. They don't need to be always waiting for some people to pass by and give them money. They can control their destiny if they start to think differently, and then if we add a little bit of support for them. So that's a leadership for me. Not like I'm making a call, for the government. I'm making a call for other people. I want other people to make a decision, but you need to do lots of things to support them, right? And somebody has to make a call. So for UNDP, I'm making a call for Malawi, but for 130 staffs, I tell them, you have to be a leader in your own areas, because your job is not just doing it, but you influence other people for the positives. And that's technical knowledge, yes, but your personality too. Thank you. Lady here and you in the back, yeah, please. From Togo, yes, we had a chat, yes. Yes. Okay, how we are getting money? Part of it is coming from headquarters, but the allocation is decided by member countries. Basically, member countries tell us, you have to give more attention to the least developed countries. But also middle-income countries is important. The way we mobilize resources is kind of different by, by country context. But in my case, for example, I get $10 million from headquarters. I make strategic investment of that money to convince our partners that actually we are not just talking, we really mean it. So I'm putting part of my money here. Please, can you join us to bring our resources here to make things bigger? So that's called third-party contribution. from big countries, US, UK, EU, Norway, Ireland, Japan, China, India, whoever is interested in joining hands with us to promote good things, sometimes they'll give us money because, oh, Shigeki, yeah, for example, in the area of environment, you have some expertise and you have some team working. We don't have the environment team. But I like what you're trying to do. I'll give you some money. Can you do it together with us? We'll get money from them. Okay. So we kind of join hands. We're not subcontracting, but where we feel that it is particularly important for us to make bigger investment, we reach out to those partners, discuss our case. Of course, it has to be good for them as well. So that requires a bit of business acumen as well. But when they agree, yeah, okay, Shigeki, you make sense. And you are doing something which is important for us too. Let me give you extra funds so that you can make it a little bit bigger. That's another way. Another way of mobilizing funds is so-called like environment, global vertical funds, global environmental facility, global climate fund, GCF, GF, and HIV/AIDS global fund. There are global funding pool of money which member countries are putting together to help countries deal with some specific challenges, be it in the climate change or be it on the HIV/AIDS. And we mobilize resources together with the government. So we work with the government to produce a proposal, we submit it through the process. If we are successful, those global funds will give money to the country. And that is more often than not, if we make proposal together, then UNDP would help implementing that project. So part of that fund may come to UNDP for us to implement. Additionally, for example, middle income countries, you have money already, middle income. So sometimes we go to the government themselves and say that, listen, let's discuss development challenges. This is how we can help. Maybe expertise, maybe a small project, maybe supporting your project. And in middle income countries, governments give UNDP money. So not like donor countries, not vertical funds, but government themselves have money to spend, but what they need is, for example, policy advice, substantive network, innovation, those kind of intangible support. Sometimes, or actually many cases, those governments give UNDP money. Then yeah, what you are saying is interesting. It makes sense. We want to know that. I'll give you money. You do the project. So that's government cost sharing, so-called. In middle income countries, it's more and more like not somebody else giving money, but government investing in those areas of work. And some of them come to UNDP. Anything else? Major source of financing? Not only UNDP, but many other agencies are now opening the door for individual donations. Yeah. And not UNDP yet, but I think some other agencies are already accepting that cryptocurrencies, right? Bitcoins and others. So we are trying to diversify the funding source so that we can, in a way, we can reach out to more people. One Bitcoin is big enough money, but a small amount is fine. But we want more people to feel that development is part of their business. So that's another way we are experimenting. Yeah. Okay. Private sector, yes, we're working more and more with private sector, but then getting money from private sector is a little bit tricky part because we need to make sure that we have neutrality, right? We are not overtly influenced by specific interests of the private sector. So do they give us money directly? Not in many cases. And we have to go through very specific due diligence process so that we can be sure that everything is taken care of. But we are working more and more with private sector in, for example, operations, helping them to come up with some kind of project more holistic way. In Ghana, I worked with Cadbury because Cadbury is older than Republic of Ghana. Right? And they said, oh, we've been here for 100 years. we've been giving libraries and other few good things, but we want to come up with some more consistent holistic project to support cocoa growing community. And they said, but I don't know how to put them together. UNDP, can you help? I said, yeah, of course we can help. But on one condition, I don't become a marketing manager for Cadbury. On one condition. If you agree on that, we can help. And we work together. They gave us some money to support formulation of the project. And now it became a foundation in Ghana. So I'm very happy what we started is now becoming a standing alone foundation for Ghana supporting cocoa growing community. So private sector partnership is very important part of how we want to influence the wider development discourse. Yeah, we can talk more, but yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think UNDP is one of the first international organizations I heard about, like 20 years ago, when they came to our village to support the MDG project, Regional Development Growth Project.
Yes.
But, so the staff came around and luckily they stayed in our house, so we interacted with them. Now, I discovered that most of the structure of the project then was that they give out incentives like palliatives just to caution the effect of poverty. Sometimes cultural inputs about some basic needs. Now my question is, I see that in the strategic plan 2022 to 2025,
yes,
poverty is
still there. But I actually, in Malawi, I stopped using poverty reduction. I always call it wealth creation. But anyway, yes.
Now, is this still the same strategy UNDP is applying? Because if you continue that way,
yeah, that's a reason why. Very good question. That's a reason why we are trying to change the development narrative, because we cannot be perpetually addressing poverty. You know, put it in your personal context. If you keep preoccupied with your weaknesses, I'm horrible in math, I need to be better in math, and you torture yourself 24 hours to become better at math, you don't make too much progress because there are excellent guys in math. Why are you trying to be the same with somebody else? You have much better things in you, right? So rather than focusing on deficiencies and problems and difficulties, let us focus on talents and potentials and focus and invest in it so that we can, our money we're putting in will be longer lasting and more catalytic. And of course, within UN, there are humanitarian colleagues. You know, their job is to save the lives in front of them, right? World Food Program, UNHCR. Their job is to save the lives, because without lives, there's no future, right? For them, bringing food, bringing supplies, bringing medicines and protecting them in the camp is the first thing they must do to save lives. But when we call humanitarian development nexus, there has to be a transition from there to more continuous support to support you to develop. And that's where the development narrative has to change. Rather than focusing on saving lives, then after that, what do? We continue to say that, okay, you know, we need to address poverty. Is it the best way to address poverty? We want to address poverty. But is it the best way to address poverty when we say that we need to catch up and we need to be with somebody else? And we need to address deficiencies because that's a bad thing. And you enjoy much more if you're doing what you like, right? You don't mind staying all overnight, maybe playing video games. You know, I used to do it in high school. I never complained because I liked it. But it's not video games. But if we play to your strengths, if you support you doing what you like, and then add capacity development, engage more people, create values, and convince more people that actually you are good at something. You must be good at something. Let's see what you're good at. And they will support you as long as you want to challenge yourself. That may be better and sustainable way of even addressing poverty, but even better bringing our economy and society to a kind of new level of coherence and and interactivity. So that's where that's the reason why we're changing the narrative. And as you see, we're investing in entrepreneurship and digital and youth and women. We're not giving money to them, but we are networking them. We are giving them concrete support to make things happen. We are telling stories for more people to inspire other people that they can do it themselves. So we are creating a platform and the space for them to convince themselves that, yes, we can make things happen. And when it starts to happen, it's easier for us to convince our friends that we need to support those guys, because they are making things happen. They know what they want. So that requires a bit of different approach. And that's what, for example, UNDP side is now advocating. It is not to deny that humanitarians are very important. We need to save lives. But once people are saved and protected, then we need to think how to put them in a different trajectory so that hopefully they can keep going on their own power. But for that to happen, like you said, giving money all the time is not the solution. Right? How can we help them to create values for themselves? So we are kind of approaching the same issues in a different way and investing in a slightly different manner. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I can take one more question. Last question. Yes. Oh, last two questions. Okay, quickly, 1 minute each.
My name is Aditya, PMP student from Indonesia.
Yes.
I want to ask you a silly question.
That's scary.
Why each countries wanted to donor for UN to develop Malawi, for example? And how do you manage your organization ideals to develop Malawi and agendas from the other countries?
Okay. How does UNDP what?
How do you manage your organization ideals?
Yes.
To develop Malawi and agenda of the donor countries.
Okay.
And my second question?
Yes.
Maybe one question.
Okay, to start with, first thing first. My priority areas come from national development goals. So we don't create our own goals for the country. We discuss with our stakeholders, broader stakeholders, and more often than not, these days, countries have long-term development plan. For example, Malawi has Vision 2063 backed up by 10 years plan. So they have pretty clear idea how they want to go. My job is to figure out how best I can help them in my area of responsibility. Second question?
Is there any agendas from the donor countries? And how
Yeah, of course, because donor countries themselves, they have particular interest, right? And they have different degrees of interest. But one of the kind of advantage of UN is that all those 196 countries discussed and agreed on, for example, SDGs. So that's everybody's goal. It's not something I'm imposing. Member countries adopted unanimously. This is a lens we will discuss development, right? So then, when we engage with lots of other donors, we can provide the same language, same perspective, same lens to cut the reality. And then if we start to kind of put transparency and analysis into our discourse, that will make it easier for different people with different interests to start to find a common area of work. So that's what we are trying to do, to create a common space and common platform for different people to come together and come up with a common agenda for the country. So I think that's a particular strength UN can have, because it takes time, but once it's agreed, it becomes everybody's agenda. Okay, thank you. The last question in the back, yeah, 1 minute. Yeah. Yes.
I don't want to my question, but thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to
Yeah.
But the main challenge is the process. Sometimes we also
Yeah, you have to.
we're like, no, that's not training and development. But usually the transfer of money is usually
Very technical question. Yeah.
we have to pay from that.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of reality is a little bit complicated because from our side we're using the money global society has given us. So there has to be certain system and procedures and accountability, right? And then also there has to be assessment of our counterparts' ability to manage those funds. And depending on the result, then we kind of adjust the level of flexibility in terms of managing and transferring our resources and accounting for it. So there are certain kind of accountability aspects to the money going through UNDP or whatever the agency you're talking about. At the same time, on the government side, you have your own system, right? And you have own procedures. So always it's a bit of a dance we need to dance carefully, understanding each other's system to see how we can kind of marry the two systems, hopefully not so different, but work in more kind of seamless way.
also there any other criteria sometimes when we submit our proposals,
Yeah, I mean there are
they will say the representative,
there are yeah, there are standard procedures. There are standard procedures for UNDP for any organizations to discuss projects and allocate funds and account for it. But of course, there are different categories too. For example, if in real emergency, you don't have time to write project document, right? And then there's quick release funding scheme, which can give you quick cash injection to keep going. While we come up with more bigger integrated proposal, like flash appeals, that is for UN country team as a whole. So there are a range of tools and potentials which we can discuss specifically fit for your situation. So I think the best way is really to work with your team on the ground because they know those things and their job is to find the best fit for you. Yeah. But I know in reality, it's a bit of a complicated dance sometimes because of the accountability, due diligence and all those things has to come into play when we spend money. Yeah, but we want to make it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I wish we had more time, but I think now, the lecture is over. There is some coffee and tea available if you are thirsty. Please enjoy them and have a good night. For a group photo, please.